Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Payoff Pitch. My name is Joey Olberding, and I will be your host for all things sports. So, today is a Tuesday. It is January the 9th, and some big event in sports has just happened. It happened last night, and earlier into today. It was such a big deal, and it's really gained more and more popularity ever since the college football playoffs started to exist. Beforehand, it was a series of bowls, and that is still the case. But now with 4 teams going in the top 4 seeds, and then they battle it out, the top 4 ranked, to see who wins it all. Like the Super Bowl, except on a smaller scale. It's gotten bigger and bigger, and I can tell that the hope for the NCAA is to have it be on that level of the Super Bowl, but it is not there quite yet. However, the Super Bowl has had notoriously great games, not bad games, great games throughout its long run as being the ending to the football season for the NFL. And that held true last night with Alabama and Georgia squaring off and facing each other in the national championship game. Alabama won. They always win. Or so it feels like. They didn't win last year. Clemson won, but they won. They went to the national championship game too. But Alabama won this year. And they won again, and they won 26-23 in overtime. In overtime against Georgia. Now, Georgia had already been involved in one overtime game this season, and that was just the week prior when they faced Oklahoma to see who would get into this game. The winner, of course, was Georgia, and it was overtime in a way bigger game. It felt like 2 times the amount of points that this game had. Georgia beat Oklahoma in a big comeback game against Oklahoma in overtime, and it was a big comeback, and everybody was shocked. Oklahoma had the game, but Georgia came back and won. And in this case, it was the same story, but a different team pulling out on top, that being, of course, Alabama. So, in this game, there were a lot of things that happened, and a lot of big things, too. Shocking performances. Jalen Hurts, who was the starting QB of Alabama, was actually pulled in the second half in favor of a freshman, Tua Tagovailoa, who managed to perform great after starting out with a 3-and-out, nothing doing. He came back, threw a touchdown, threw another touchdown, and all of a sudden, Alabama won. Seemingly just like that, getting into scoring position time after time after time by a freshman QB, a random guy. He did great, and he did outstanding, and he really showed the depth of Alabama in general and why they won. And Alabama just goes to show that, they always have a chance to win. You can never count them out. I remember earlier, just a little earlier, right before these final college football rankings to see what the 4 teams would be that would get into the national playoffs, the college football playoffs. Everybody said, okay, Alabama's not going to get in because they just lost a big game against Auburn. But lo and behold, they did because of other upsets. And given that chance, we saw again that Alabama is the best team in the nation. And that still holds true and will hold true until the start of next year in the college football season. Georgia is another team that can go up against Alabama, but doesn't take one game to beat them. Because Alabama always has something up its sleeve. This time, it was a freshman QB and a bunch of nobodies that nobody on Georgia had ever heard of. You weren't about to prepare for a freshman QB when, the quarterback Alabama already had is just fine. No, I definitely would not prepare for that myself. So I just find that all of them were wild, that Alabama was able to make such a strategy that if Georgia really did have this team on lock, that they would be able to just throw in somebody new and they'd be okay. And that has been something that's gone along with Alabama for years, it seems. Especially with Nick Saban at helm. With Nick Saban coaching the team, he's such an outstanding coach. And it's really one of the best coaches maybe to go down in history. Just because of how competitive he is and how he is constantly competitive time in and time out. You will not see him not compete. No matter what team he has, he will somehow morph that team into being wildly successful, as we've seen time after time after time. Though the draft classes he gets and the recruits he gets are all very good and nice, what he does with them turns them into something more than just good players or great players. He turns them into a superstar team. Not just a superstar player, but a collection of superstars all on one team, that being Alabama. And it's really impressive, too. I think that if I were to start off with a new team, that it would be hard to get to know the players so easily and be able to move yourself into a contending spot right away. But Nick Saban was able to do just that. And that really goes to show, how amazing he is at coaching and how other coaches like Bill Belichick and, we've seen coaches throughout history, Vince Lombardi, who are able to do that with players that may not even seem that great at first. But if you manage to think of them if you manage to get them to think themselves are more than just a player, a team, then you really get somewhere. Moving on to the professional side of things, or the more professional side, I should say, the NFL. There are a lot of games that transpired. Playoff games that transpired over the weekend, along with some college football games. But the NFL games interest me a little more because of the significance they have for the other teams playing. With the college football playoffs, there are only 4 teams, so it's kind of easier to measure who everybody's going to face. With something like the NFL, however, with 12 teams, it is much harder and it is much more interesting when these teams face off to think about, okay, what if blah 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 upsets blah blah blah. It's really much more interesting, and that's what I wanted to start to talk about. So, the Titans beat the Chiefs. The Titans beat the Chiefs over the weekend. They did it in a fine enough fashion, and they were able to beat the Chiefs. It was an upset. The Titans were the 5 seed, the Chiefs were the 4 seed, and now they go on to play the Patriots. Of course, the New England Patriots, as everybody knows, is a powerhouse, absolutely dominant in everything, really. They are so great at quarterback with Tom Brady, running. They always have so many options, wide out, defense, everything. They always manage to do something, and the Titans are still a young team and don't really have that, though they are kind of in a win-now scenario, and they kind of do need to do something. But facing Tom Brady and the Patriots is not what you'd want to do. I know that I wouldn't want to do that. I would much rather face Ben Roethlisberger, even if he has Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, which the Jaguars will be doing. As the Jaguars beat the Bills in a rather close game, surprisingly close game, in the Bills' first playoff game since 1999. They were facing off, and the Jaguars, they managed to beat them. And I've said throughout the season that the Jaguars are a really underrated team, and I think they'll be great. And Blake Bortles showed that. He really did. He threw pretty well, but his legs, he ran all over the field. And what's amazing to me is this stat. He has the 4th highest rushing yards per attempt by a QB in NFL history. You think about all the people who rush for big yards today that are QBs. Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, really Carson Wentz, really anybody. Anybody can run across the field and do it well, but Blake Bortles is the one who's 4th highest in NFL history. That really amazed me, and it shows that the Jaguars really can surprise you in a lot of different ways. Anyway, since we're talking about the AFC, we may as well talk a little more about the matchups that will happen in the AFC. So, the Titans and the Patriots. The Titans and the Patriots are a solid matchup. Except, it won't be. See, the Titans are good enough. They have Marcus Mariota, who's a pretty solid QB, DeMarco Murray, who's proved to be a pretty solid running back and pretty good, and they have pretty solid wideouts, but that is nothing compared to the Patriots at this point. We all know about Tom Brady, and always know, oh, Tom Brady, he will hurt you. He will not make you feel good. And you know what? He will not in this situation if you are a Tennessee fan. Because everything about the Patriots, and I can say this over and over and over again, is just better than the Titans. It's as simple as that. Their running game, they have more options. DeMarco Murray is more of a power running back, and they also have Derrick Henry, but with also a better offensive line than the Titans. In general, the Patriots are better in the running game, and with the more options, you can really surprise your opponents in doing anything. And that's the same thing with the wideouts. They have more depth at wideout, and they know the routes. Tom Brady's throwing the passes. Marcus Mariota's solid, but he's no Tom Brady, and nobody can really be Tom Brady. And defense and all of that, it just shows that the Patriots will be better. So I think that the Patriots simply just have too many weapons. In the Steelers and the Jaguars game, I have to go with the Jaguars because I've thought that the Jaguars have had that the entire season, and I feel like the Jaguars are a team that'll come out really close. It'll be a really close ball game, but the Jaguars will just win because of their defense. It'll be tough. Facing Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell is not easy. But if there's anything we've seen from the Bills game, it's that the Jaguars can and will get you. Now, the Steelers will be looking at Blake Bortles now, because Blake Bortles ran all over the field. But that also doesn't mean that you have to, not look at his passing game or any of the other running backs on the squad, because they exist too, and Blake Bortles shines with his rushing by not having you expect that he will rush so well. You look at all the other weapons they have, even wide receivers, though they aren't the strongest offensive game. They certainly do have their weapons, and, all the players will be looking at, Blake Bortles passing here, or Hearns, running up the field and making a catch, and he has that strength and he has that speed. It can really mess you up. They'll be focusing on that, and that's what usually would happen. But with a Blake Bortles running him kind of being like, oh, I see that. Now you look at his running game, and you're not even looking at his passing as much. And you kind of have to, if you focus on both sides of the spectrum, it's just going to be a normal ball game against, the Jaguars, in which, they'll surprise you in some aspect, or they'll just be not very good. You can't rely on the fact that, they just will happen to not be very good. This is a playoff game. It's not like that. You need to give it your all, and give it your all they will. And with the Steelers do have some very good aspects to them. Of course, they have weapons. Having Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell just kind of makes it, that much better for you. But the Jaguars also have a great defense. And with that great defense, I do believe that they will be able to get enough interceptions and enough sacks, especially sacks, so that they will be able to win. And I think it'll be a very close ball game. It may come down to the fourth quarter or the third quarter. It will not be a game decided automatically. Not at all. This will be a very close ball game. But the Jaguars will win, I think. In the NFC, I'm looking at the Falcons, who beat the Rams. And the Falcons did it surprisingly easily. Most people coming in, especially into the season in general, where they started off kind of slow, kind of thought, okay, the Falcons had their shot. They did well last year, They did fine, they had Matt Ryan. He won MVP, but now it's not their time. Well, they showed it against the Rams. They did well. I mean, they ran, they passed. They did it all, and they managed to just win a clean, easy victory. On the other side of the spectrum, or the other side of the bracket, are the Saints, who beat the Panthers in another pretty close ball game. Nothing too crazy, but a little close against the Panthers. And the Saints remind me a lot of the Patriots in many aspects. great QBs, great running backs, or great QB, singular, great wideouts. They have some solid players there. I guess you could say they're like a poor man's Patriots, quite literally, because Tom Brady's really rich. But anyways, they managed to beat the Panthers, and that leads the Falcons to face the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Saints to face the Vikings. Now, I think it'll come down to this. The Falcons game. It'll come down to the fact that the Eagles are missing somebody very dear to their hearts and the mind too. Well, if you're a football fan, that is. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz should have won MVP this year. Hey, he still may, but he probably won't, because he got injured and is out for the season. And to replace him is Nick Foles. And Nick Foles is not a bad quarterback. Nick Foles is a pretty okay quarterback. He's a lot like Case Keenum and the Vikings. Pretty solid. He can hold a team, but he's no MVP. And I think that's what's going to be the Eagles' downfall in this game against the Falcons. I think it'll all come down to the fact that the Falcons have everybody. The Falcons have Mohamed Sanu, they have Julio Jones, they have Tevin Coleman, they have Devontae Freeman, and they have Matt Ryan. While the Eagles, they still have a lot of their weapons, but not the most important one, who's out and will not come back for the rest of the season. As much as the fans beg and cry, and so do football fans in general, we will not see that. And because of that, the Falcons will win. And the Eagles also have a pretty poor running game. You'd think trading for Jay Ajayi this time 2 years ago, you'd think, wow, that is like gonna be the best running back in the league at this point, but he just hasn't been that good. And because of those two things, I think that'll lead to Atlanta winning, though in a lower score than maybe the rest of the games. With the Saints, I think it'll come down to the fact that the Vikings have a really good defense. They have a really, really good defense. And the Saints also have a pretty solid defense this year too, with their offense. But I think it'll be a great game. I think the Vikings will win on a field goal. Like, it'll be that close. It'll be a 3-point game. And I feel like a lot with all the Lions playoffs games that, they've been in, there will be a lot of bad calls, or a Cowboys game. And you know that Des Bryant catch against the Packers where, he had it, or maybe he didn't, and, that was a really, really controversial call. There have been a lot of those in the NFL this season. Way too many. I think that the Vikings will win because of that. The Saints will give on a pretty solid performance, but the Vikings are the better team and deserve to win. Now, that would leave the final four teams. The Patriots, the Jaguars, the Falcons, and the Vikings. And who would win those games? Well, a lot of it comes down to the fact that who knows what'll happen. None of these games have happened yet, and it's really hard to say whether, Tom Brady will do well, and there will be no controversy. There will be no Deflategate too. I really hope that's not the case. Because all of us, come on. I mean, if you saw Deflategate, you don't want another one. In any case, there's a lot of football storylines that we haven't seen, and there's no way that any of these games are for sure. So all of this is just pure speculation. And who knows if any of this will really happen. And with that, I think that'll do it for this week's edition of the Payoff Pitch. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and check us out on TuneIn Radio. Also look for us on YouTube at Clark Montessori. And from me, Joey Olberding, I hope you stay tuned to 95.7 MRC for the Payoff Pitch and so much more.